thanks everyone for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Kirsten Stasio, and I'm the Executive Director of the Nevada Clean Energy Fund. So I'm going to talk to you about the Nevada Clean Energy Fund and the programs that we're in the process of launching. And I also want to take some time today to talk about the clean energy incentives in the Inflation Reduction Act in particular, and how they can benefit Nevadans, given that it's fairly new and there's some complexity around it. Part of the role that I see the Nevada Clean Energy Fund playing is helping folks navigate those incentives. And then the Nevada Clean Energy Fund can also come in and provide any gap financing that's not covered by those incentives. So I have a couple of objectives with this presentation. One is that I hope to provide some useful information on financial and technical resources that are available or are coming down the pike for clean energy in Nevada, and not just from the Nevada Clean Energy Fund, but other sources as well. And then also I'd like to get all of your input on our programs kind of in these early days as we're launching them, on where we can have the most impact, and also if there are partners who we should be talking to. So I've got about a 20-minute presentation with some slides, and I'd like to kind of leave some of the bigger questions towards the end. There'll be some time towards the end for discussion, but mainly take clarification questions throughout. But before I start, does anyone have any questions or comments? Okay. All right, so let me share my screen. Okay, here we go. Can everyone see that okay?
Yep, it looks good.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I want to start with who is the Nevada Clean Energy Fund, or I'll call us NCEF. NCEF is a nonprofit organization that whose mission is to support a thriving, affordable, and accessible clean energy economy, primarily by providing financial and technical resources to Nevadans. And the reason why we focus on clean energy is, as you all are very well aware, clean energy can help folks reduce energy costs, spur job growth and economic development, improve the quality of the air we breathe, and also address climate change, all very important goals. So for our purposes, clean energy, it can mean a variety of different things, everything from energy efficiency retrofits in homes and commercial buildings, to electric vehicles, to residential and community solar and energy storage projects. And in terms of specific programs that we're launching and stakeholders that our programs are designed for, they can be, they're really designed for making clean energy more accessible for homeowners, for multifamily housing, for buildings that are owned or occupied by small businesses or nonprofits or governmental entities, and also for rural areas. And I'll talk a little bit about why kind of these are our at least initial priority focus areas for our programs. But the Nevada Clean Energy Fund, we were established by state legislation, and we were formed as an investment and lending entity. So the primary tool that we use is not grants, but low interest loans and other types of loan products. And that's really because most clean energy measures that are available are profitable investments. And that way loans can be paid back over time, and return capital that we can then reinvest back into the community to really scale our impact. So our vision is really to implement scalable and financially self-sustainable financing solutions to make clean energy more accessible for all Nevadans. And the term accessible here can mean a lot of different things depending on the particular use case. In some cases, stakeholders might not be able to access financing because interest rates are too high, or maybe they can't meet minimum creditworthiness standards. Maybe the loan term doesn't match the payback period, or they're just not a big enough fish. The check size is too small to be attractive for traditional financing entities. So accessible financing can mean everything from loans that are low interest, loans that have longer terms like 15 years or more, that deploy alternative underwriting methods to make lending available to folks with lower credit scores. So that's kind of what we mean by accessible financing. And our objective is not to displace other sources of capital, but fill the gaps where traditional investors won't operate because, like I talked about, maybe creditworthiness standards aren't being met or the check size is too small, things like that. Maybe there's perceived risk that traditional investors aren't yet comfortable with, but maybe they will be in the future once financing and business models are more proven. So this is a kind of a brief summary of what the Nevada Clean Energy Fund does. We're really in the early days of building our financial and organizational capacity to launch the programs that I'm talking about. To date, I joined the Nevada Clean Energy Fund in January as its first executive director. And I'm working with the board to build our capacity and launch these programs. But to date, what we've really focused on is, stakeholder engagement and understanding what the needs are and where they are in Nevada. And we've also started to provide some of that education and technical assistance to a variety of different stakeholders about the clean energy opportunities available to them. So I want to, and on that note, I want to take a quick moment to highlight a few particular items that may be of interest to you. First is the Governor's Infrastructure Summit that's happening next Friday in Las Vegas. And it's really designed around highlighting a lot of the historic investments in infrastructure in Nevada, and infrastructure in general, not just clean energy right now, related in particular to the bipartisan infrastructure law. I'll actually be speaking on a panel moderated by the director of the Governor's Office of Energy, Director Bobzian. And so the registration link is here in case any of you are interested in attending. Another conference I want to highlight a little bit further out is the Nevada Housing Conference in mid-October in Reno. The Nevada Clean Energy Fund, we're organizing a panel on clean energy and water smart opportunities for affordable housing. The conference, it's organized by the Nevada Housing Coalition, and it's really the housing conference of the year. So it's a great opportunity to talk about and raise the conversation and normalize the conversation about clean energy and sustainability among the affordable housing community. So registration link is at the bottom here as well. And also, I just want to highlight some of the work that we've been doing in school bus electrification. This isn't really a conference, but just something to keep an eye on. As you all are likely aware, electric school buses, they save schools money, they make the air our children breathe healthier. There are a lot of benefits that come with these buses. And because of that, we've been working pretty closely with several of Nevada's rural school districts over the past few months to help them apply for about collectively $4 million in federal rebates for about 10 electric school buses through the US EPA's Clean School Bus Program. So, we're excited to continue to support those electric school bus efforts as part of our broader fleet electrification strategy. And excited for some of these kind of early successes that we've seen in the rural areas. All right, so I talked about what NCEF does and what we've been up to. I want to shift a little bit to talking about this concept of a green bank. So the Nevada Clean Energy Fund, as I mentioned, was established by state legislation back in 2017, and it was established to operate as Nevada's state green bank, which is an institutional model that has been successfully implemented in over a dozen US states. Green banks, they primarily use public funds to provide low-cost financing for clean energy projects that would, as I talked about, otherwise struggle to access funding from traditional investors. And green banks, they typically have a particular focus on underserved communities because underserved communities are often the ones that lack that access to financing to invest in clean energy measures and realize the benefits involved. So even though we're a relatively young organization, we're working to bring successful program models that have been developed and proven over the past decade by green banks in other states to Nevada. And you can see, I think there are about 23 green banks across 17 states, including the Nevada Clean Energy Fund in Nevada. And the first one was established in Connecticut in 2011. And these green banks collectively have deployed, billions of dollars into clean energy projects, and catalyzed, and those dollars have catalyzed additional private sector investment as well. But looking forward, green bank efforts are really expected to be supercharged by a particular provision in the Inflation Reduction Act called the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. And the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, it allocates $27 billion for green bank type activities. This $27 billion, it's going to be competitively administered by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, and eligible recipients for these funds are nonprofit organizations. You can see the legislation language here, at least the first appropriations component of it. But eligible recipients for these funds are nonprofit organizations like the Nevada Clean Energy Fund that were designed to provide capital to low and zero emission projects. And these nonprofits need to be non-depository financial institutions. So that's us. So Nevada, I'd say, is really well positioned to access and implement the greenhouse gas reduction funds because we have a green bank in place, established by state legislation with a board, appointed by the governor, and some early work in place. And it's really my and NSF's priority right now to ensure that Nevada is competitively positioned to access and implement these funds. And part of that, I should say, is also continuing to build our financial capacity outside of these federal funds, because as a nonprofit, funding our operations can come from legislative allocations, philanthropic donations, also private sector impact investments, and these other sources of funding are pretty critical to pair with the federal funds. Because to ensure that the Nevada Clean Energy Fund develops the organizational capacity both to access and implement the federal funds, and because a lot of the clean energy incentives that are available in the Inflation Reduction Act often have anti-stacking requirements. So in order for us to provide gap financing, for example, for under the EPA's Clean School Bus Program, that funding, low interest loans aren't allowed. Other funding is not allowed to come from federal sources. So we're also focused on bringing in other sources of funding to support these efforts. So outside of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, we're really dedicated to implementing programs that help Nevadans access the other clean energy funding that's available to them through provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act. Also, as you're all, I'm sure, aware, the bipartisan infrastructure law, and then also programs administered by other entities like the USDA and utilities like NV Energy. But I want to take a few minutes to highlight some of the incentives that are coming down the pike from the Inflation Reduction Act in particular. All right. And with the caveat that none of this should be interpreted as tax and legal advice. So we're going to get more information from federal and state agencies in the coming months on these incentives. But this is really just a summary of what we know is there in the Inflation Reduction Act. So the Inflation Reduction Act, it has many different tax credits, rebates, and grant programs that are designed to support clean energy projects, ranging from utility scale renewable energy projects to rooftop solar, to efficiency and electrification in residential and commercial buildings, to electrification of passenger vehicles and also commercial fleets, to domestic manufacturing of clean energy technologies. At a high level, it's good to understand that many of the incentives have prevailing wage and domestic content manufacturing requirements. And some of the incentives are either only available to low or moderate income communities, or communities or regions that have particular characteristics, or they maybe have bonuses for projects that benefit LMI communities. So it can get a little bit complicated to navigate, and one of the areas where the Nevada Clean Energy Fund is focused on is making sure that the folks, the stakeholders who are eligible for these incentives and for the higher incentives are aware that that's the case. Let's see. Another thing to note about the Inflation Reduction Act is that it made many, for tax credits in particular, that maybe historically were really only accessible to entities with a tax appetite. The Inflation Reduction Act, by and large, made tax credits available to non-taxable entities like nonprofits and government entities through what's called direct pay provisions. In the case of EV tax credits, also the Inflation Reduction Act has a assignability measure in there where if you don't have enough tax appetite, you can assign it to a qualified dealer, things like that, which makes those tax credits more accessible. All right, so the first incentive I want to talk about are tax credits for clean energy projects, what are known as investment tax credits and production tax credits, the ITC and PTC. So the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, increased and extended these tax credits for clean energy projects like wind and solar and energy storage. And it also made these tax credits available for standalone energy storage projects for the first time. Previously, they had only been available for energy storage that had been paired with solar projects. So let's look at the investment tax credit for projects under 1 megawatt. These include this includes third-party owned residential solar. Quick note on that, in addition to commercial solar projects. So the base tax credit starts at 30% of eligible project costs, and there are bonuses for meeting domestic content minimums, for being sited in a so-called energy community, which Peter and the Nature Conservancy, I'm sure, can speak to, and for projects located in or that benefit low-income communities. For projects over 1 megawatt, the base investment tax credit starts much lower at 6% of project costs, but there are bonuses for meeting labor requirements, for meeting domestic content minimums, and for being sited in so-called energy communities, and also low-income bonuses as well. You see a similar structure for the production tax credit, and projects can choose between the PTC and the ITC. But you just don't have the bonuses for low income projects. All right, so another incentive program in the Inflation Reduction Act is the program for high efficiency electric home rebates. And under this program, low and moderate income electrification projects can collectively get up to $14,000 for electrification work in the home. I mean, this is pretty significant and has the potential to cover almost all the costs of an electrification project. It's also accessible to multifamily housing developers that serve low and moderate income communities as well. So these rebates and others that I'll talk about, they'll be implemented by state energy offices and also tribal governments in this particular instance. So we'll be getting more information from our state energy office about these programs. There's also the homeowner managing energy savings rebate program, the HOMES rebate program, that can't be stacked with the electrification rebate program, but it provides rebates for energy retrofits that scale based on how much energy savings are associated with the retrofits. There's also energy efficiency tax credits that are more widely available, so there aren't necessarily low income or low and moderate income requirements associated with it, but they're a little bit lower. These have always been in place, but I believe the Inflation Reduction Act has extended the has increased the amount that can be deducted on an annual basis. All right. So lots of tax credits available for energy efficiency and electrification. Let's shift also to talking about EVs and EV infrastructure rebates. So there is a clean vehicle tax credit that for passenger vehicles and light duty trucks that allow credit for up to $7,500 for new EVs. The new EVs do have to meet particular requirements in terms of domestic content manufacturing, and those requirements are going to ramp up over time. And there are also, listing price limits and income requirements associated with this tax credit. So that's on the kind of passenger vehicle side, but there are also pretty significant commercial clean vehicle tax credits and tax credits for charging stations for medium and heavy duty vehicles. You could imagine these applying to everything from school buses to fire trucks to commercial fleets. And pretty important when you think about the fact that medium and heavy duty vehicles are a significant source or a disproportionate source of air pollution on our roads relative to their percentage of our total vehicle population, just because of how many miles they travel, as well as the default fuel that's currently used. So lots of great incentives for electric vehicles and for clean fueled vehicles, which is super important given that transportation makes up the largest portion of our greenhouse gas emissions, 27%. All right, and there are a lot of other programs in the Inflation Reduction Act as well. I'm not going to spend too much time on these, but I just want to make sure I can share these slides that folks are aware of them, including tax credits for domestic manufacturing of clean energy products, tribal electrification program, et cetera. So really exciting. All right, given time, I'm coming up on my 20-minute limit that I promised, but my other slides here are just kind of highlighting some of the main benefits of why we want to promote clean energy. You can achieve their economic benefits because you can achieve operational and cost savings by investing in these clean energy measures that I'm talking about. There's a lot of renewable energy potential in this state. Reducing energy burdens and climate burdens is also really important in Nevada. And particularly important for disadvantaged communities who have the highest kind of cost and health burden associated with our energy usage. Lots of job benefits in Nevada, given our robust clean energy sectors, from solar to energy storage to energy efficiency. And the need for clean energy is becoming even greater in the wake of rising gasoline prices, dwindling hydroelectric resources that strain regional electricity prices, and increasing temperatures. And I just want to end by calling out my amazing board of directors who I'm working with to really deploy to achieve the Nevada Clean Energy Fund's mission of accelerating clean energy growth in this state in an affordable and accessible way, and really launching our program. So with that, I'll open it up to discussion and take questions and comments.
I see. Brian, I'm sorry I muted you when there was you had your mic on, there was some background noise while Kirsten was speaking, so I muted you, and I'm not gonna lie, I can't figure out how now to unmute you, and that was my mistake. I apologize.
It
Okay,
appears
you
that
can
I
still.
just unmuted myself, if that's
Okay,
okay.
thank goodness, I feel better. Okay, I'm so sorry about that.
Sorry about the background noise. I didn't hear it at my end.
No, you're okay.
So just a couple of quick questions in terms of your program. Do you have an initial budget for staff, or are you the only staff at this point? And do you foresee that growing? And then also, do you have any initial budget for lending at this point?
Yeah, great question. So I am the Nevada Clean Energy Fund's only employee at this point.
Okay.
I have an initial startup budget from the Governor's Office of Energy, a sub-grant using recycled ERA funds, actually. That gets me through June of next year. So I've been fundraising from philanthropic sources and also talking to state legislators about seeing if we can get some capacity building funding through legislative allocations. Because like I mentioned, I do think it's really important for the Nevada Clean Energy Fund to build its organizational capacity, both to competitively access the federal funding, and then also have a portion of funds available for investing in instances where federal anti-stacking requirements make it impossible for us to use those federal funds for lending to certain clean energy projects.
Great. Let me ask another follow-up on that. Has there been any discussion about having a portion of the tariff on the utility bills that go to renewable energy and energy efficiency go to your program?
That's not something that I've heard discussed.
Okay.
It could have been part of the discussion before my time, but it's certainly a way that several of my Green Bank counterparts get funded, is through a rate rider. Others just get funded through straight state legislative allocations, but many through a rate rider. It's a good question.
I worked for the Energy Trust of Oregon at one point, which was a kind of a nonprofit. It had a little different status, but that's how they got their funding. So
interesting.
Kirsten, do you have any large success stories or any examples of any organizations that have been able to access some of this funding or tax credits? Even if you don't name, specific names or anything, but do you have any success stories?
Are you talking about generally like the federal clean energy tax credits in general, or specifically the greenhouse gas reduction funding?
Really either. Just, have you seen anything come out of these? You always hear about these, this is available, this is available. Is anyone using them?
Yeah. Well, a lot of these incentives and programs are kind of like to be implemented, given that the Inflation Reduction Act just passed. However, I know for the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, the EPA has 180 days after the passage of the act to start getting money out the door. So it's one of the first buckets of funding that we're really going to get information on. That should be around mid-February. But I think I'll just make another plug for the Infrastructure Summit next Friday. That's going to be an opportunity for folks to hear about how a lot of the funding, in particular from the bipartisan infrastructure law, is coming into the state. I know we've got, I think, 26 million for weatherization assistance, which is a huge increase over what the state has had in previous years. And so that's things like insulation and weatherization for low income residences. There's also I think it's 38 million for NEVI. Lots of exciting examples of how that's going to get implemented. But for the Nevada Clean Energy Fund, I'd say our early successes has been really, we got out there and hit the pavement. I did, and talked to a lot of the rural school districts to really raise the profile of the EPA clean school bus rebates on their radar. And the result of that is that 3 of the school districts that I've been working with, collectively, they applied for 10 electric school buses, which is combined about 10% of their fleet. So it's pretty significant. So that's exciting.
Man, I'd say that's significant. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You mentioned the rebates being administered by the Office of Energy, it sounds like. Do they have any kind of a program for that? And how long do you think it might take them to roll that out? Partly I'm asking as a homeowner because I'd like to get a rebate next year.
Right. Yeah, I mean, some of the tax credits I think will be probably available sooner if that's something that would make sense in your context, because it would you probably just look at the guidance from the IRS. But yeah, for the State Energy Office, it's such early days. I think I imagine the DOE is first going to need to issue guidance to the state energy offices, and then the energy offices are going to need to develop their programs based on that.
Okay.
Well, does anyone else have any other questions?
I'll say really just make a quick plug. Definitely follow us on Twitter, sign up on our website, because we, as you might be able to already see on our website, we try to provide up-to-date information on as it comes out on these incentives. We have a lot of information on the EPA Clean School Bus Rebate Program. We have information on USDA programs, NV Energy's programs, things like that. And we're building that out. And Director Bobzian's on my board, so I'm constantly asking him, talking to him about what they're up to.
That's great.
Well, thank you so much, Kirsten, for all of your support and guidance today. Todd, can you provide a link to the website? Absolutely. Just thank you for taking the time with us, kind of showing through these different, different incentives and rebates coming out. It's really exciting knowing that there's going to be some support for the clean energy field moving forward.
Is your slide set available to share?
Yes, I don't know what the best way to share it is. Kayla, do you have suggestions there?
Yeah, if you email me a PDF, I can email that to everyone in attendance today. Does that work?
That sounds good.
Okay, happy to do that.
Right.
And the recording will also be available on YouTube as well.
Awesome.
Great. Well, thank you. Thanks for having me and for all the questions. I'll also put my email in the chat if folks have any follow-up questions or inquiries.
And I can include that in the email as well. Yes. Right. Thank you very much, Kirsten. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Good luck. You got a big job ahead of you, it sounds like.
It's fun. I like it.
All right. Well, as soon as you get me those slides, Kirsten, I'll go ahead and send that out to the group, and then they can contact you if they have any other questions. All right.
All right. Sounds good. Take care.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Peter.
Bye.
Bye.